Hey guys, what's good? Welcome back to JDB Selects, coming at you today with my round 4 tips and predictions. But before we get into this week, let's as always look back at how we did last week. And just precursor to, I am a wee bit under the weather this week, so if my voice sounds a bit funky or I cough, splutter mid-recording, you just know why. So last week we tipped 6 out of 8 games, only missing out on the Sharks and Sea Eagles. I did also change my tip from the Knights to the Storm. If you do want to be aware of any team changes, then you must be a member in my Discord. All the details to join are down below. Obviously the Sharks got pumped by the Tigers, I never saw that one coming. And the Sea Eagles I thought were a wee bit unlucky with that obstruction call, but it is what it is. 6 out of 8, not too bad, not too bad. And last week we also launched the JDB Selects Discord server. If you do want to join, all the details are in the video description. Round 3 was a good week in the Discord. We racked in 12.4 units. If you're a $50 unit size, that's $620 in profit. That more than covers the membership fee for joining, which is less than $5 a month. If you do want to support the channel and make some money while doing so, hit the join button, join our Discord server, become an active part of the community, and let's make some money together. Now, if you don't know by now, we are running a subscribers tipping comp. All the details to join are in the video description. 3 big prizes this year, including grand final tickets, an NRL jersey of your choice, as well as an NRL shop voucher. The sooner you join the comp, the better, obviously. We are 3 weeks down, but you can still catch up in the next 24 weeks if you join today. And speaking of the tipping comp, Nicky Nick still retains that #1 spot atop the JDB Selects ladder. I'm slowly making my way back up that leaderboard. I'm a bit annoyed that I changed my tip from the Storm to the Warriors and the Sea Eagles and Eels game yesterday. I could easily be up in that top 3, top 2 position, but you know, it doesn't matter now. You know, you can't change the past. So congrats to Nicky Nick, Brighton, the Real Enigma, Han, all the rest of you guys, and good luck to everyone else in the tipping comp this week. Let's get stuck into my tips and predictions for round 4. Alright, round 4 gets underway on Thursday night with the 2nd placed Sydney Roosters taking on the 4th placed Penrith Panthers at Allianz Stadium. Starting first with the Roosters, they celebrated Jared Waerea-Hargreaves' 300th game with their 2nd largest win ever over arch rivals South Sydney Rabbitohs, 48 points to 6. The Chooks dominated possession and territory and ran out to an 18-point lead at the break thanks to a try-double from Sam Walker. They picked up where they left off in the second half, piling on more pain for the Bunnies with standout performances from James Tedesco, Dom Young, and both Brandon and Sandon Smith. Smith and Watson did a fantastic job of keeping their foot on the throat following Sam Walker's failed HIA, and that certainly leaves the Roosters in good stead if this season is to be Luke Keary's last. This was the kind of performance that we all expected from the Roosters last year, but perhaps, as the saying goes, good things take time. And in terms of teams list for the Roosters, Lindsay Collins is looking at 4 to 6 weeks on the sidelines with a minor hamstring strain. Sam Walker was ruled a Cat 1 HIA, however the Roosters will appeal as they believe it was a neck injury and not a concussion, so Walker will likely line up this week. And as for the Panthers, following his spectacular performance in the grand final last October, Nathan Cleary once again proved to be a class above, orchestrating a dominant 34 to 12 point win over the Brisbane Broncos on Thursday night. Penrith were forced to defend their line for the opening 10 minutes before a relieving penalty got them down the right end of the field, and they never looked back. The Panthers' right edge were near unstoppable in the first half, with Cleary seemingly seeing the game in slow motion and the edge pairing of Isaac Tungo and Sania Taruva at their destructive best. Dylan Edwards brought up yet another triple century, running for 309 metres, and despite the second half being closer on the scoreboard, the Panthers were dominant through the middle, making easy metres through a Broncos pack missing Payne Haas. It really didn't take the Panthers long to click back into gear after a very patchy start to the 2023 season, and they looked just as dangerous as ever despite losing key personnel year on year. And in terms of teams list for this one, James Fisher-Harris is in doubt still with that shoulder injury. Ivan Cleary kept tight-lipped at the press conference on a possible return date, but reiterated that the injury wasn't as serious as first thought. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Panthers have a strong record over the Roosters, winning 9 of the last 10 encounters. That includes 8 straight. The Panthers have also held the Chooks to just 6 points or less in the first half of their last 5 games. And looking at the live odds too, the Roosters are currently $2.62, with the Panthers coming back at $1.49. The line at the moment is 5.5 points, and the over and under is 38.5 points. Ooh, a good game as always to start the week, but I am going to take the underdog here. I'm going to take the Sydney Roosters 1 to 12 points. I really liked what I saw from the Roosters last week. They seem to have their mojo back. I'm not confident on that, so I mean, it's going to be tight. It's going to be a close, low-scoring game either way. Both sides are very, very strong defensively, so I don't think there's going to be many points. But at this stage, I'm going to take the Roosters 1 to 12. If anything changes, you can check my Discord for updates. Alright, moving now to the first of two Friday fixtures, starting first with the last placed South Sydney Rabbitohs, taking on the 12th placed Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs at Accor Stadium. Starting first with Souths, the Rabbitohs suffered their second highest defeat at the hands of the Roosters in their 116-year rivalry, getting pumped 48 points to 6 in front of a sold-out Allianz Stadium. It went from bad to worse for South Sydney, who could only manage 4 sets in the opening quarter and came up with 15 errors, which has been the story of their season this far. I don't really have many words for what they dished up out there other than lackluster and pretty much embarrassing. Despite making a string of changes, including dropping Lachlan Ilias and moving Damien Cook to the bench, Jason Demetriou now finds himself deep in a hole that I'm not sure he can get himself out of, at least not anytime soon. And in terms of teams list for the Bunnies this week, there were no new injuries, so the only team changes that I can see may be strategic from Jason Demetriou. And as for the Bulldogs, the Doggies finally gave their faithful fans at Belmore something to cheer about, completely shutting out the Gold Coast Titans 32 points to 0. Canterbury built into the game nicely with Viliami Kikau returning to his barnstorming best, causing havoc on the left edge. I thought Josh Curran also brought a lot off the bench, running for more meters than any other Bulldogs forward. The win is probably more impressive too, considering Stephen Crichton was basically a passenger again, with Carraz, Tracy, Taff and Wilson all putting in big shifts. I'm sure Canterbury will gain a lot of confidence with a win like that, but until they can string a few wins together and do it against better competition, I'm not entirely sold. And in terms of teams list for the Dogs, Josh Adokar is expected to return on the wing this week, which will likely mean that Connor Tracy makes way. Looking at the two sides, head-to-head, the Rabbitohs have won 11 of the last 15 meetings. However, the Dogs did win their most recent meeting 36 points to 32, albeit during an Origin-affected round last year. The Bunnies have also won 4 of the last 5 games against the Dogs at Accor. The live odds currently have the Bunnies at $1.48 favourites, with the Dogs coming back at $2.66. The line is currently at 6.5 points, and the over and under is currently 41.5 points. Fairly straightforward one for me. I do think the Rabbitohs can get this done, so I'm going to take the Bunnies here 1 to 12. I know the Dogs did get their first win last week, but that was against a fairly bang average Titan side missing some key players. I do think the Bunnies have the stronger middles, and so they can probably make some easy meters through the middle of the Dogs and set up the likes of Walker and Cody and Latrell on the edges. So for me, Rabbitohs 1 to 12. Alright, and the final game on Friday has the 14th placed Brisbane Broncos taking on the 1st placed North Queensland Cowboys at Suncorp Stadium. Starting first with the Broncos, who were again on the receiving end of a Nathan Cleary masterclass, going down 34 points to 12 to kick off round 3. The Broncos were dealt a cruel blow in the opening 5 minutes, losing star fullback Reece Walsh to a nasty gash on the side of his face from a sickening head collision with Taylor May. Brisbane were already dealing with the loss of Reynolds and Haas, and losing Walsh was just a step too far. Defensively, they were torn apart by the Panthers on the edge, with multiple players forced to play out of position, and their attack lacked any direction, desperately needing Jock Madden or Ezra Mam to step up and take control of the side. To their credit though, they showed a lot of tenacity in the second half, but never looked like running the Panthers down. No doubt a disappointing showing in the much anticipated grand final rematch, but hard to read too much into that performance given the circumstances. And in terms of teams list for this one, Reece Walsh was unable to return and has suffered a facial fracture, so will be unavailable this week. Payne Haas is set to undergo surgery, so will miss 4 to 6 weeks, so also won't be available until around 7 or 8. Adam Reynolds will also be monitored this week, with no clear return date as he looks to return from a lingering knee issue. And as for North Queensland, the Cowboys pulled off yet another come-from-behind win, this time running down and away from the Dragons, 46 points to 24. North Queensland scored first but were put on the back foot early, unable to match the intensity of the Saints in the opening 20 minutes. The tide would eventually turn following a Dragons era, with Todd Payton's side running in 42 unanswered points. Standouts for me were obviously Dearden, Robson, Drinkwater and Holmes, but I also thought Griffin Neame was unbelievable in the middle, running for almost 200 metres and bagging a 4-pointer of his own. It's certainly somewhat concerning though that the Cowboys have shown an ability to let teams get away from them, and if they do that against some of the better teams in the competition, they may be unable to reel them back in. Nevertheless though, 3-0 to start the season is really encouraging for the Cowboys, especially considering how they performed last year, and honestly, when the Cowboys are on, they're easily one of my favourite teams to watch. Good news for the Cowboys too is they suffered no injuries in the game against the Dragons, so I would expect them to be the same 1-17 this week. Looking at the two sides head to head, the Broncos have won 9 of the last 12 games against the Cowboys in Brisbane. However, it is 3 wins apiece in the last 6 meetings. North Queensland have also enjoyed playing at Suncorp recently. They've won 5 of their last 6 games at the stadium. Ooh, another tough game to tip this week, but I am going to take the Broncos in this one, 1-12. I'm going to guess that Adam Reynolds does make his return this week, and even without Walsh and Haas, I do think the Broncos can get past the Cowboys. The Cowboys have shown in recent weeks that they almost lost to the Knights. They let the Dragons put 18 points on them inside 10 minutes, so they certainly have bounced back against some of the lesser teams in the competition, but can they do that against the Broncos? They've obviously shown a little bit of weakness on their edges, so I do think the Broncos can get around and get past the Cowboys, so I'm going to take the Broncos here at home, 1-12. Moving now to the first of just 2 Saturday fixtures this week, starting first with the 15th placed St George Illawarra Dragons taking on the 5th placed Manly Sea Eagles at Wynn Stadium in the Gong. Starting first with the Dragons, they were outclassed and outmuscled by the North Queensland Cowboys, 46 points to 24. The Saints conceded an early try but bounced back in style, scoring 3 straight tries inside 10 minutes before a botched try from Raymond Faitala-Mariner took the wind out of their sails for the remainder of the match. It was eerily similar to their game against the Dolphins the week prior, where they were beat up through the middle and their heads went down with only a handful of players seeming to believe. I'm honestly not too sure about the Dragons this year, guys. Their recent performances really don't bode well for a finals appearance in 2024. Looking at the teams list for the Dragons too, Jacob Little should return from a concussion this week. Francis Molo is also available for selection after serving a 1-game suspension. And as for Manly, the Sea Eagles fell agonisingly short against the Parramatta Eels, 28 points to 24, thanks to a highly contentious obstruction call in the dying stages. It was a cracking contest with both sides dominating the other in periods with plenty of points. Manly were ahead of the clock at 14-0 after 13 minutes, but only saw 9% of the ball for the final 15 minutes of the half. They again failed to fire after the break, but fought their way back into the contest, and when Tom Trbojevic put Kohler over under the post, it looked like momentum was going to swing their way, only for that try to be denied. Despite the questionable call, Manly still have plenty of things to work on, but they also did plenty of things right, and I really do enjoy their style of play this season. They do just need to firm up their defence on the wing, and I reckon there'll be a real problem for any side in the comp. Looking at the two sides head to head, it has been fairly even in recent years, with both sides winning 3 of the last 6. However, the Dragons have loved playing Manly in the Gong. They've won 8 of the last 9 games there, and they've only lost to the Sea Eagles there twice since 1999. And looking at the live odds, the Dragons are currently $3.25, with the Sea Eagles coming back at $1.35. The points line is currently 8.5 points, and the over-under is currently 45.5 points. Ooh, I'm going to go against all the Dragon stats here and take the Sea Eagles 1-12. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Manly 13+, but I do think the Dragons will want to bounce back after the last 2 disappointing performances. And they do have plenty of points in them, the Dragons. I know that might sound silly, but I really do think the Dragons have a lot of points in them. Defensively, they lack a lot, especially with Sloan at the back. But I do think they can trouble the Sea Eagles a wee bit. The stats certainly say that they should. But Manly, man, when they're on, with Tommy Turbo fit, they're a different side. So I do think the Sea Eagles will win, but I am just going to take them by 1-12 points. Alright, moving now to the final game on Saturday. We have the 16th placed Gold Coast Titans taking on the 7th placed Redcliffe Dolphins at Cbus Super Stadium. Starting first with the Gold Coast, the Des Hasler era couldn't have started much worse for the Titans after they suffered a massive defeat at the hands of the Bulldogs, 32 points to 0. The Titans should have got on the board in the opening minutes through AJ Brimson, but instead botched a certain try, which ultimately summed up their entire 80 minutes and was one of only a handful of times they threatened the line. The Titans missed 40 tackles and came up with 11 errors, never allowing themselves sustained time with the ball in hand. To make matters worse, they lost captain Tino Fa'asuamaleaui in the 62nd minute with a season-ending ACL injury. It's a massive blow for the Titans, who are already dealing with a few key injuries and already do lack a ton of depth through the middle. It's already looking pretty grim for coach Des Hasler, who will be forced to try and plug some more holes in a sinking ship. And in terms of teams list for the Titans, Jaden Campbell will likely make his season debut at fullback this week after playing reserve grade last week. And as for the Dolphins, they had the bye in round 3, but the week prior bounced back from a disappointing showing in round 1 by destroying the Dragons 38 points to 0. It was the biggest win in the club's short history, as well as the first time they've kept an opponent scoreless. The Finns smothered the Dragons with a classic Bennett style of play, kicking to corners with no offloads and just hard, straight running. The performance was even more impressive considering they lost Cody Nikorima in the 18th minute and spent time with Jeremy Marshall-King off the field as well. A massive turnaround for the Dolphins, which should fill them with a ton of confidence going into this week's clash with the Titans. Looking at the two sides head to head, the Titans are yet to beat the Dolphins, losing both meetings last year by exactly 2 points. The bookmakers currently have the Finns favourite at $1.70, with the Titans coming back at $2.15. The line very short at 2.5, and the over and under is currently sitting at 44.5 points. Pretty straightforward one for me. I think the Dolphins win, and Dolphins win well, so I am going to take the Finns 13+. I don't really think I need to explain that one anymore. Alright, moving now to the first of 2 Easter Sunday games, starting first with the 11th placed NZ Warriors taking on the 13th placed Newcastle Knights at Go Media Stadium here in Auckland. Starting first with the Wars, they finally broke the duck egg, and in doing so ended the Raiders' unbeaten streak, albeit unconvincingly, 18 points to 10. It was a grueling contest with both forward packs going at it through the middle. I thought Mitch Barnett was easily the best on ground for the Warriors, throwing his body around and getting involved in everything. The right edge of Rocco Berry and Dalen Watene-Zelezniak were also outstanding, with Dalen coming up with that crucial effort play to send Luke Metcalf over the line and secure the Warriors the win. RTS also delivered the knockout blow with a show of brute strength to get the Warriors their first dub of the season. He just needs to get more ball in space more often. It has been a patchy start to the season with a couple of really close losses, but hopefully this is the spark that the Warriors need to boost their confidence and continue their climb up the ladder. And in terms of teams list for the Wars, Wade Egan should be named again, but obviously will be monitored throughout the week. Chance Nickel-Klokstad is yet to be seen this season, but is a possibility of making his first appearance of the season, which might be fast-tracked given the fact that Tane Tuapiki was ruled out with an HIA, but we'll have to wait and see how he goes. And as for the Knights, Newcastle managed to hold off a depleted Melbourne Storm outfit 14 points to 12 to get off the mark in 2024. It wasn't a great game by any standards with 13 errors and 40 missed tackles, but credit to the Knights for being able to hold off the Storm's late charge. Dane Gagai was menacing on the right edge, as was new recruit Kai Paul Pearce, who has continued to impress in his debut season. Ponga was threatening at times, but they still lack that cohesion that they had to end the season in 2023. And I guess that is also to be expected given the fact they are going through a change in their halves pairing. So speaking of the halves, Cogger, a pretty mixed bag, committing 3 errors in the first half alone and coming up with a few kicks out on the full, as did Gamble. No doubt their halves pairing will be better for the run, but they will need to find a way to unlock Ponga more often. Alright, looking at the teams list for the Knights, they made it through unscathed, so I don't expect any changes to the 17 unless perhaps some movements between the bench and starting side. Looking at the two sides head to head, the Knights have won 4 of the last 6 games against the Warriors. However, Newcastle have an awful record in New Zealand, only winning 2 of their last 16 games across the Tasman, dating back to 2006. Alright, the live odds currently have the Warriors at $1.48 favourites, with the Knights coming back at $2.67. The line is currently 5.5 points, and the over and under is 40.5 points. Pretty straightforward one for me, because I am utterly biased. Warriors 13+. See you later. Alright, and the final game on Sunday has the 10th placed Cronulla Sharks taking on the 3rd placed Canberra Raiders at PointsBet Stadium. Starting first with the Sharks, they were handed a good old-fashioned spanking at the hands of the West Tigers, 32 points to 6. Cronulla started strong with Nico Hines threatening before completely capitulating and being unable to wrestle momentum back from the Tigers. The Sharks could only manage a 60-odd% completion rate, coming up with 16 errors, often pushing the pass. In their defence though, they had to deal with a fair bit of adversity, finishing the game with only one player available on the bench, as Royce Hunt, Toby Rudolph and Dale Finucane all picked up injuries. It was a rude awakening for Craig Fitzgibbon's men, who had pulled off back-to-back gritty wins to start the season, but obviously given the injuries issues they had, maybe a little bit of leeway can be given. And looking at the teams list, like I just touched on, the Sharks may be lacking through the middle this week, with Hunt, Rudolph, Finucane and Hamlin Ueli all under injury clouds. And as for Canberra, the Raiders came up just short against the Warriors in Christchurch, 18 points to 10. Canberra were in the match the entire time with their forward pack going toe-to-toe with the Warriors' middles. Defensively, I thought the Raiders were really solid, with Jordan Rapana and Matt Timokor putting in big shifts. Ethan Strange has also been really impressive for the Raiders, but it just wasn't his night and he'll only be better for it with more game time under his belt. Ricky's Raiders may have lost, but they didn't lose any admirers with another tough performance, and there'll be a thorn in any club's side week to week. And in terms of teams list for the Raiders, Corey Horsburgh will return from suspension this week, which will be a massive in for Canberra, and Seb Chris may also be included if he has recovered from his HIA concussion the week prior. Looking at the two sides head to head, the Sharks beat the Raiders 24 points to 6 last time they met, but that's Cronulla's only victory in the last 10 meetings between the two clubs. Canberra, they've also won 5 of the last 7 games against the Sharks at PointsBet. Alright, and the live odds currently have the Sharks at $1.50 favourites, with the Raiders coming back at $2.50. The line is currently 5.5 points, and the over and under is 41.5 points. Alright, I'm going to back another underdog here and take the Raiders by 1 to 12 points. I think the Sharks may be lacking a lot of depth through the middle this week, and Canberra arguably have one of the strongest, most consistent forward packs in the competition. And if that's the case, I do think the Raiders can continue their winning ways against the Sharks. So at this stage, Raiders 1 to 12. Alright, in the final game on Easter Monday, as always, the 6th placed Parramatta Eels hosting the 9th placed West Tigers at CommBank. Starting first with the Eels, they held on late to take down the Manly Sea Eagles 28 points to 24 in what was easily the game of the round. Parramatta were blown off the park early, with the Sea Eagles torturing their left edge before momentum did a massive 180, with the Eels enjoying 91% of possession in the final 20 minutes of the half. The second half was a very similar story, with Parramatta enjoying the best of it in the first quarter and Manly in the second. They can count their lucky stars with what was a contentious obstruction call that went their way, but come on, that's irrelevant now. Standouts for me were Paulo Madison, who brought a lot off the bench and changed the game and blew it open with offloads. Joey Lussick has also been really impressive for the Eels this season, while I thought Mitchell Moses controlled the game well and turned the ball over in the right places at key times. And in terms of teams list for the Eels, Bailey Simonson and Micah Sivo are expected back on deck this week, which will likely mean that Morgan Harper and Blaze Taulangi will make way. And as for the Tigers, Benji finally has his first win as an NRL head coach, with his side dominating the Sharks 32 points to 6 at Leichhardt. It was an incredibly spirited team performance, with West completely out-enthusing the Sharks, spearheaded by captain Appy Coruscant. Appy was in everything, coming up with huge effort plays, like diving on loose balls that he had no business getting. The Tigers' middles dined out on shark fin soup, with Clemmer, Uta Ikamanu, Bateman, Hole, Seyfarth and Fainu all running for over 100 metres. Let's just hope though that wasn't just a one-off, and the side can play like they have something to prove every week, because last week really showed just how much class there is in that Tigers outfit. No injuries either for the Tigers, so I imagine Benji will name the same 17 again this week. Looking at the two sides head to head, as is often the case with the Tigers' opponents, all the stats do favour the Parramatta Eels, who have won 13 of the last 16 meetings. The bookies also tend to agree with the Eels, the shortest favourite of the week, at $1.24, with the Tigers coming back at $4.10. The line is currently 12.5 points, and the over and under is 44.5 points. I too am going to side with the bookies here and take the Eels by 1 to 12 points. I'm going to give the Tigers the benefit of the doubt by taking the 1 to 12 instead of 13 plus. Parramatta though, when they're on, they're a hard side to stop. So I do think Parramatta win regardless. It's up to you whether you take that 1 to 12 or 13 plus margin, but the Eels should be too strong. Bang, and just like that, we're done for another week. Thank you as always for watching. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button, leave a like on the video, drop your tips and predictions in the comments, join the Discord, etc, etc, and I'll see you in the next one.